All right, let's talk about the history of Apple. It's a story that's got everything. We're talking genius, epic failures, and maybe one of the greatest comebacks in the history of business. It's wild. So let's just dive right in.
Just let that sink in for a second. The company, whose products are probably in your pocket or on your desk right now, it almost didn't make it. And that, right there, is the core of this entire story. This was never a sure thing, not by a long shot.
And like all good tech legends, this one starts in a garage. We're going back to the 1970s. You gotta remember, the whole idea of a personal computer wasn't really a thing for normal people yet. But a couple of guys named Steve were about to change all that.
And it all came down to this incredible dynamic between the two of them. On one side, you had Steve Wozniak, the engineer's engineer, a total wizard who just loved the circuits, making things work. And then you had Steve Jobs. He saw something different. He knew that technology wasn't just about specs, it was about how it made you feel. Woz built the engine, but Jobs designed the sleek car around it and made you believe you just had to have it.
And their first creation, the Apple I, it was humble. It wasn't a computer like we think of one today. No, it was literally just a circuit board. You had to bring your own keyboard, your own screen, everything. But here's the key part. They sold 50 of them. That 30 grand was the proof Jobs needed. He saw it. He knew. Okay, there's a market here. And that brings us to this number, which just shows the incredible leap they made next. With the Apple II, they sold a complete package. It was a friendly-looking machine that you could just take out of the box, plug in, and it worked. And the result? 6 million units sold. All of a sudden, Apple wasn't just some garage hobby. It was a full-blown phenomenon. Of course, with success comes money, right? And with money came an IPO. And with that came a ton of pressure. The company that was once a nimble little startup was now a huge public corporation, and, well, that's when the cracks really started to show. So, they go public, they make hundreds of people millionaires literally overnight. You would think they're on top of the world, unstoppable. But no, they immediately followed it up with a string of disasters. The Apple III was notoriously buggy. Then came the Lisa, which was actually revolutionary. It had a graphical interface, a mouse, but it was so ridiculously expensive that nobody could afford to buy it. And this is where the internal drama just completely boils over. The infighting got so toxic that Steve Jobs, the co-founder of the company, gets kicked off his own pet project, the Lisa. So what does he do? He goes into pure revenge mode. He basically says, fine, I'll go build something even better. And he poured all of that fire into a secret new project called the Macintosh. But even the Macintosh wasn't an instant success. It was criticized for being slow and too expensive, and sales started to trail off. This led to this epic power struggle between Jobs and the CEO he had personally hired away from Pepsi, John Sculley. And it all came to a head in the boardroom. In a shocking, unbelievable move, the board sided with Sculley. Steve Jobs was out. He was fired from the company that he built. So now, both Steves are gone, and Apple enters its darkest chapter. The company completely lost its way. It lost its innovative spark, and frankly, it very nearly lost its existence. Without Steve Jobs' vision, Apple's products just became beige. They were boring, overpriced boxes. And this created a massive opening for their arch-rival, Microsoft. Bill Gates and his team were making PCs that were cheaper and, just as good for most people. The magic was gone. The decline was absolutely catastrophic. Demand for Apple products just fell off a cliff as the market flooded with cheaper alternatives. By 1997, the situation was beyond dire. The company was literally just weeks away from going completely bankrupt. It looked like it was over. But then came maybe the most dramatic plot twist in business history. In a desperate, last-ditch effort to save the company, the board did the one thing that seemed completely unthinkable just a few years earlier. They decided they had to get Steve Jobs back. And you have to understand, Jobs did not come back to make friends. He came back to win. Apple bought his new company, Next, which was basically just a fancy way to bring him back into the fold. He immediately took over as CEO, and his plan was ruthless. He junked 70% of the product pipeline, just threw them in the garbage. He fired 3,000 people, and he focused the entire battered company on one single Hail Mary product. And that product was the iMac. It was a total revolution. It looked like nothing else out there. It was colorful, it was an all-in-one design, it helped introduce this new thing called USB, it made getting on the internet easy, it was cool again, and it worked. It sold 800,000 units in just 5 months. It saved the company. Apple was back.
So the iMac saved Apple from the brink of death. But the next phase of the company's life, this is where it went from simply surviving to absolutely dominating. The focus shifted from the desk to your pocket, and that changed everything.
And it didn't start with a phone. It started with music, the iPod. That simple idea of putting 1,000 songs in your pocket was an absolute breakthrough. It was a monster hit, selling 100 million units and completely taking over the music industry. But more than that, it built a foundation for the entire Apple ecosystem we live in today.
And this is the moment the world changed. On stage in 2007, Steve Jobs gave a masterclass. He teased 3 separate products: a touchscreen iPod, a mobile phone, and an internet device. He kept repeating it: an iPod, a phone, are you getting it? And then came the big reveal. It wasn't 3 devices, it was 1, and they were calling it iPhone.
And just look at what that moment did. The numbers tell the whole story. They go from a successful IPO to the brink of death at just $300 million, and then, with the launch of the iPhone, they skyrocket to $72 billion. The comeback was complete, and a whole new second act was just getting started. The iPhone launched Apple into the stratosphere, but this final chapter of the story, it's really about the end of an era and the huge challenge of continuing a legacy of innovation under totally new leadership. Because in 2011, after a long battle with cancer, Steve Jobs passed away, and the entire world wondered if Apple could even survive without its visionary. His hand-picked successor, Tim Cook, stepped into what had to be the most immense pressure cooker of a job on the planet, keeping that dream and all that momentum alive.
And what an era it's been. Under Tim Cook, Apple hasn't just survived, it has thrived in ways I don't think anyone predicted. We're talking over 1 billion active devices worldwide now. He oversaw the launch of new categories like the Apple Watch, made bold moves like ditching the home button with the iPhone X, and, maybe most importantly, took full control of their computers by designing their own M-series chips. That move alone gave them an incredible advantage. And the result? A valuation that has soared past an almost unimaginable $3 trillion.
Which brings us right up to today. For the first time since the Apple Watch, the company is launching a truly new kind of product. It's not a phone, it's not a computer, it's something completely different, and it feels a lot like one of those big, game-changing launches from the past. So this leaves us with the one big, crucial question. The Macintosh defined personal computing. The iPhone redefined communication. Both of them were revolutionary products that totally changed our culture. Can Apple, with the Vision Pro, actually do it a third time?